Corrine Malcolm, rest day. It's been a minute since we caught up. How are you doing?
Oh, I am good. I feel like it took a solid 10 days for my brain to come back online in a lot of ways. And then July is ripping by. Every weekend there's something going on. I did the Ptarmigan Traverse, a big glacial traverse here in the Cascades. This past weekend, I'm crewing and pacing Cascade Crest. This weekend, I'm running White River 50 Mile next weekend. So it's like July is just flitting on by.
Yeah, well, I am recording this from the Little Nell Hotel, the comforts of a 5-star 5-diamond hotel here in Aspen, Colorado, where Harmony and I met and where we were married back in 2017. And I have enjoyed at least a few days of quiet time after what has been an ultra marathon of race coverage. And I feel like, there's a lot for the two of us to debrief on. I still haven't been home since before Western States. It's been 5 weeks at this point, but I start making my way west tomorrow morning. And then, we sort of have a little bit more of a break before, of course, the European part of our season commences. But Corrine, you and I haven't caught up since Western States, and I feel like we owe it to the people to just chit chat a little bit about it after sharing so many days leading up to the race together, and then of course whatever it was, 17 or 18 hours on the broadcast together. Maybe just start with, I don't know, I'm sure you've had a couple weeks to meditate on how things went down. Tell me how you're feeling about it, and then I want to prompt you with a few cool things.
Yeah, I mean, you cheated on me with Tim Tollefson because you were in Mammoth doing a little recap show. So I won't hold it against you or Tim. I enjoy Tim as well, so that's great. But yeah, we haven't gotten to connect at all due to us both being mushy / Hardrock being at the forefront of your work-life balance there for a second. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was such a cool race to watch, just the inner race dynamics as far as the battles that were going on, the people that were finding their way to the front, the maybe old school attrition that we saw a little bit, historically fast times at the front of the race, but honestly, maybe more spread in the back part of the top 10 that we haven't seen for the last couple of years. That's more a pre-2020 top 10 kind of first 10th spread, I feel like, versus a post 2020 Western States first through 10th, which left the door open for some people to make moves late to recover and to make their way back into the top 10 to get a spot back for next year. And just, again, still so freaking excited for our new champions, for a Cougar going back to Salt Lake City, going to Utah with Caleb. And also to see Abby Hall, who is one of my first trail and ultra running friends in the sport. We ran our first 100-mile race together back at Leadville in 2017. And so it's just it's really cool to watch the people that you care about immensely do what that they've been capable of this whole time.
Yeah. So fun. And we broke viewership records on the live broadcast
the whole time
on race day, the entire time. And we still haven't had a full, debrief on how all that went. But I think it's safe to say that Western States and the live broadcast has achieved a bit of escape velocity. It was funny because right after Western States, we went to Telluride to get ready for Hardrock and to chill out. And I went and grabbed a beer from the local little bottle shop and walked out first thing in Telluride. And somebody said, "Hey, great job on the broadcast." And they had, otherwise had no idea who the hell I was. So I don't know. Evidence that trail running, I think, is becoming more and more mainstream, which of course we talk about all the time. One of the things I wanted to just chat about before we move off Western States, I have been reading a lot of the race reports that have come out, and I felt like the pairing of Caleb Olson's race report with Rod Farvard's is really interesting. I particularly loved Rod's for a couple of reasons, notably because it was so raw and honest and even kind of sad. He was very open and honest, confronting vulnerably the emotional consequences of his DNF, but he also had a lot of really interesting insights from within the peloton, details that you and I could never gather on a live broadcast. And I figured it would be fun to chat through it. The first thing I want to just throw to you was how he described what ended up being the winning move in the race when Caleb and Chris came past Rod and Seth as they were leaving Robinson Flat. Did you have a chance to read through that at all? Or?
I haven't gotten to read Rod's full report.
Yeah, I'll link to it in the show notes, but I just pulled an excerpt. So I just want to read this and then you can respond, because I think this is interesting for the audience. Okay, so just like visualize this happening. And he's describing Seth climbing up to Robinson Flat, commenting on how Seth is just a beautiful climber. And then they leave the aid station together, effectively in first. And what Rod said is, quote, everything felt pretty great, and Seth and I crested the top of Robinson Climb before the infamous half marathon descent to Swinging Bridge. Before I knew it, Seth decided to take off. I tried to keep steady at 6:20 to 6:30 pace towards Dusty and couldn't believe how far Seth was pulling away from me. I wouldn't be surprised if he was running 5:30 pace. So Seth basically running 5:30 pace, a little over 30 miles in. At first, I was comfortable letting him go, knowing that that would hurt anybody over the course of 100 miles. But then Caleb and Chris caught up to me and began chasing Seth. I had a huge internal debate with myself on whether or not I should go with them, but figured it was warming up a lot. This section was exposed and I needed to keep my downhill legs alive for the last 40 miles of the race. It is crazy to think that this was the move that won the race for Caleb and also almost won the race for Chris. Excuse my reading ability there, but you get the point. I just think it's fascinating that Rod's having this internal debate as they're running towards dusty corners, seeing Caleb and Chris come past him thinking, this feels like it's too early, too risky. And it ended up being the move that won the race. Comments from you?
Yeah, I think they went on an early assault in a lot of ways that I think that we were all unsure if that would stick. And then it seems like Killian was kind of waffling off that group as well. Like listening to people talk about the race, listening to Caleb's interview post-race that he did with Single Track was awesome. It was a really great sit down. And part of that was like, Killian would kind of fall back on the descents and then absolutely charge the uphills. And I think Rod and Seth actually experienced that as well. I listened to Seth's post-race interview with the Boulder Boys and also on Coffee Club. And he mentioned that as well, this moment where it's like, all of a sudden, like Killian would just like tempo away from them up every single climb. And Seth's like, I'm not bad at running uphill. Like I'm actually quite good at running uphill, and every single uphill, all of a sudden, Rod and I would be shot out the back of Killian charging up the hill back to the guys ahead. So those little inner race dynamics, I think, are incredibly fascinating. And it is like, it's not just like a put the blinders on and go. It is like these little tiny moments that make or break people's races. There's been some conversation recently, like, is the elite race and ultra running becoming too much of a, turn your brain off and run the whole time type of thing because of crew and pacers and, quick transitions and all this kind of stuff. But I do think that internal turmoil and dialogue is still very, very present for much of the peloton.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting. And I think, one of the things we talked about during race week was that the old adage of the race starts at Forest Hill is now very old fashioned and not applicable to the modern dynamics of the professional racing. But I think the way Caleb and Chris ran the middle section of the course, and in retrospect, Rod having that front row seat to what ended up being the winning move in the race when he thought, hey, it's just a little bit too early to be pushing this hard. Obviously, as Caleb admitted in his interviews and in his newsletters, he was barely hanging on at the end. Of course, ran a ridiculously fast time and left everything out there. But, you got to take those calculated risks. And yeah, Caleb and Chris pushing each other through the middle section of the course. Ultimately, that's what launched Caleb forward. And it was sort of like that metaphor that Tim used in our pre-race coverage of the booster rockets. Yeah. So Chris ended up being the booster rocket, sending Caleb to the finish line in first, but also obviously bringing home one of the best 100-mile performances ever for Chris Myers. The other thing that I thought was interesting that I've heard in multiple places and that Rod talks about in his race report was just the chaos of Forest Hill. Again, something that you and I can't really fully feel from the studio on the track in Auburn. Did you hear much about this? Because in Rod's race report, it made it seem like it was almost something that might need to be addressed in the future. It's just too chaotic.
I heard from people on the ground, from crews on the ground, spectators on the ground, some runners, and also just like personnel that were out there, like Hoka personnel, for example, about how tight it was in places, how I think there was someone within Hoka had to like physically move people out of the way to get Vincent to his crew because like there was a wall of humans there. And so it really tunneled the runners down in a way that I think made things just extra chaotic feeling and extra, I feel like it'd probably be very claustrophobic, very loud. I listened to an interview with Riley Brady and they were saying that, you know, they are pretty sensitive to like sensory overload and even the escarpment actually, because there were more people in the escarpment than usual this year. They were worried going into the escarpment of just like, how am I going to focus on my feet and my breathing and where I am? Because this is a lot to take in and not take in, you know, very, very early in the morning. So I think Forest Hill was just that exacerbated, I imagine.
Yeah. I wonder if it might be something that needs to be addressed. The way Rod described it was he was like, I needed to have a deeper reset there. But then once I got to Forest Hill, it was so chaotic that I wanted to get out of there as soon as I could. In other words, he just couldn't have the reset that he needed because the energy was just too intense.
I think what you end up doing is I think you're going to have to move in a way to like the UTMB crew model.
That's exactly
in which there is a dedicated crew space and one person from your crew is allowed to be in there. And that does like, yes, there are oftentimes cameras bopping around in that location, but it is nothing in comparison to running through the gauntlet inside, or I mean, right before you enter the aid or right after you come out of the aid. And that would give athletes a moment to just like exhale and get their shit together, basically.
Yeah. You know, I think it would be good for the pros in another way too, in that oftentimes when they're coming into the Forest Hill aid station, it's a mile long. It's not necessarily easy to find your crew in Forest Hill, especially if it's becoming increasingly chaotic. So I think the move towards that UTMB model of having like a big Hoka aid station and one single crew captain with a ticket that comes in when you're approaching and, you know, cooling and all the necessary fueling and hydration products in a single centralized and quieter place, while still allowing the fans then, as the athletes leave, to be able to interact with them, get their videos and photographs. And
you could do that. You could do that at Robinson Flat, Forest Hill. I don't think you need to necessarily do it at the river because it's too chaotic for people to get down there. But I do know that like busing down to the river again was an issue, and we had people running down to the river because they weren't going to make the shuttle to make it down to the river to see Caleb and Abby, for example.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just think those are a couple of interesting anecdotes that have stuck out in my brain as I've been sifting through the race reports and interviews and stuff in Western States aftermath. But one thing that I haven't gotten around to that you and I were just chit-chatting about before we pressed record was the article that was written by Ultra Running Magazine about Abby Hall's training. I know you found it to be really interesting. Share a couple of the biggest takeaways.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that it wasn't, and Abby loves a good graph. Abby loves a good graph. She loves some good metrics. But it really highlighted that it was akin. Actually, they did a similar article with Jack Kunzel and Caleb Olson in Outside Magazine about kind of like work smarter, not harder. Make sure that you're really meeting the athlete's demands as what's going to work for them, i.e., you know, staying home was really beneficial for Abby because she could get the training and she needed there. She could go down to Phoenix where her parents have a house and be in the heat. She could be at home in Flagstaff, a little bit higher in elevation. She was sometimes running really boring, simple loops because it allowed her to practice her nutrition. It allowed her to practice her cooling strategy. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't, you know, she got to have a bunch of social time with friends, but it wasn't exciting training, nor was it novel training. It was a summation of the work that she's been doing for 8 years now with Coop. Actually, the last time she ran Western States and she had a really hard day, they had done a pretty high volume build for that one as well. And it just didn't quite stick but it's allowed her to continue to progress forward. And they talk a lot about kind of going back to some of her CCC training from like a volume loading principle and sticking to that. I also really enjoyed them talking about thinking about race-specific intensity and race-specific durability. And I think we've seen this from like John Albin and Kilian Jornet as well, with looking to kind of that more race-specific, a 3-hour long run that's more at race-specific intensities, or running a little bit harder towards the end of that 3-hour long run to kind of work on those race-specific surges that you might need to do in the canyons at Western States, for example. So I really enjoyed the specificity there, but I really actually want to read, speaking of Rod Farvard, one of Abby's first posts, she's had a bunch of really brilliant posts post Western States, but I'm going to quote her Instagram here because not everyone that listens to us is a social media stalker like we are. So she writes, "Good things take time. Up until Saturday, I had never performed to my potential at a 100-mile race. My first 200s, I chased cutoffs, and the most recent 2 I walked in," which is true. Like she finished in basically the golden hour at Leadville twice, in like a beanie and a down jacket. She goes on to say, "I could view it as fuel for a fire that says, quote, then why would this one go well? But instead I flipped it and I thought I have nothing to lose. Earlier this year, I listened to a podcast where Rod Farvard spoke about how it was important to him to not view past executional failures as the ceiling of what he could achieve. I knew that the fitness was absolutely there and that my race at Western States would all come down to race execution. If I'm being honest, I think most of these past tactical mistakes all rooted in racing with a mindset that wasn't right for me. I was often overly emotionally attached to outcomes and others' perception of my ability, and I wasn't taking ownership of the experience. The 100-mile distance felt like this puzzle I couldn't solve, even after 8 years of attempts. And now here I was in 2025 with an unforeseen opportunity. Sick of the past, I wanted to shed this limiting belief once and for all. The pursuit of this new mindset became a very moving, all-encompassing, electric experience for me. I visualized what my highest self behaves like, and that motivated me. I operated from some really deep, dark corners in my heart and some cavernous wells that have formed over the past 9 years in the sport. I believe the compilation of my own experiences and heartbreaks from past races and my injury became a secret weapon. We talk about the pain cave, but this work almost became a work in my, quote, heart cave, if you will.
Nice.
To me, one of the beautiful parts of ultra running is its ability to spur on personal growth and self-examination. I'm walking away from this race a better version of myself and forever grateful to a challenge big enough to shape me forever." And it just speaks again to like shedding those limitations and not being emotionally like hung up on this one thing, and kind of letting those things go to the side, go to the past, and just really focusing on now. And Cordis actually said the same thing in a post-race interview about crewing and supporting Abby, of she had complete ownership over this process. Yes, she was working with a dietitian. Yes, she was working with a strength coach. Yes, she was working with a running coach, but she also had complete ownership over that, over her nutrition, over her strength, over her running training. And these people were there to help guide her, but she had ownership over everything.
Yeah.
And I love this like all-encompassing Abby goes all in on Western States and executes the day that we've all known that she can do.
The heart cave.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure to link to that article and Caleb Olson's Substack, Rod Farvard's post-race report, and link to those in the show notes so people can go cruise through and explore them all. But man, 2 weeks later, still fun to talk about Western States. And now we get excited about 2026, but congrats to everybody. Also that same weekend, something that always flies under the radar, especially for North American trail fans, was Lavaredo. So maybe we just spend a couple seconds on this before we move on, but Americans Ben Demon and Courtney Dauwalter won Lavaredo. Ben was able to break Hannes Nomberger's course record. Courtney was a few minutes short of the women's course record, but both going to UTMB. Courtney kind of bouncing back from disappointment at Cocodona. Any comments on Lavaredo or how Ben/Courtney might be shaping up for the big loop around Mont Blanc?
It's a race I want to do desperately, and it's such a bummer that it's Western States weekend.
Yeah.
Like, can we rearrange the calendar here somehow? Same with like Mont Blanc 90K being thrown in the mix. But no, I was really excited to see both those athletes have good days there. I think we're waiting for, Ben is a guy that could win UTMB, I think, in a very real way. And he just hasn't had his day at UTMB yet. So I think getting the better of Hannes's time on a course that Hannes has nailed, I feel like time and time again, was really cool to see. And I do think that he's an athlete that seems to really be thoughtful in the same way of like, it's not super sexy training. He's doing exactly what he needs to do in order to get the work done. And good to see Courtney bounce back from Cocodona and kind of what happened there to put herself back on track, I think, to show up to UTMB feeling really confident.
Yeah. I'm hoping to have Ben on the pod again soon. He also has a fantastic Substack. So
he's a great writer.
Yeah, great writer. So I'll actually link to that too, so people can read his race report. But yeah, Ben, an American who lives in France, sort of like Katie Scheid, and has put together a few really solid seasons, but has had 2 back-to-back DNFs at UTMB. And I think there's this narrative that, at least for the men, I don't think anybody has won Lavaredo and UTMB in the same season, although a lot of people have used Lavaredo as their final tune-up for UTMB. So we'll see if Ben can become the first person to do that. I think on the women's side, it's happened a couple of times, but big results from Ben and Courtney, and good to see Courtney bounce back from that Cocodona disappointment and be back on top of a podium. Coming back to this sort of conversation around Abby Hall and her return, I felt like there's a little bit of a parallel between her and Francois Den as we move to now talk about the Nolan's 14 FKT. Francois, like Abby, had the very serious, tibial plateau fracture.
She basically jammed her femur so hard into her like tibia and fibula that she like dented her tibia, reconstructed that, had some MCL stuff. It was like just like a big traumatic knee injury, though like did not tear her ACL in it, which is amazing, but had a lot of like bony damage and bone edema that came out of it as well.
Yeah. And I think it was 2.5 or 3 years ago that Francois broke his leg badly in a ski mountaineering accident. And, it took him a little while to come back to full form too. He and I are roughly the same age. And certainly like once you have that many miles on the odometer and you're getting up in towards your 40s, it's harder to recover from those massive injuries. And speaking to him at Hardrock last year in 2024, where he DNF'd, I think he had some questions about whether or not he would ever get back to the same level. Of course, Francois is one of the greatest to ever do it. And here he is back smashing the Nolan's 14 FKT supported time by 3.5 hours. For those who don't know, the Nolan's 14 route is 14 separate 14,000 foot peaks in the Sawatch Range of Colorado. It's roughly 93 miles, at least the route that he took, with 45,000 feet of climbing. A lot of it off trail, takes a lot of course knowledge and stuff to really dial it in. And Francois clearly back on top, much like Abby Hall, he won Tour de France last year, right? So this isn't like the first evidence that Francois is back, but certainly like to break the Nolan's record by 3.5 hours.
This feels more back. Like Tour de France is a big deal and it's a huge race, but I feel like that almost seems for some athletes historically like a swan song. Like they're not racing anymore, so they're going to go do Tour, which I hate because I want to do Tour so badly. But I think that it's easy to see Tour de France and say, like Francois is done in a way, but I think that taking 3+ hours off of the Nolan's record is like, oh no, you could win Hardrock, you could go to UTMB and be on the podium. Like you're fit.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, well, maybe this makes Francois one of the favorites for UTMB now. So I don't know. It's just great to see the champion back on top. And if you look at his FKT history, it's pretty remarkable, right? Like he still owns by a huge margin the FKT on the John Muir Trail. He had the GR20 across Corsica. I think I'm forgetting a couple, but either way, like obviously Francois is in these long distance mountainous courses like a Hardrock, like a UTMB, like a Nolan's, like only someone like Killian can hold a candle to his pedigree and to his success over time.
Yeah. He also, I feel like, does a really good job of maximally supporting supported FKTs, i.e. like crewing JMT sucks. Like it's really hard to do. And they found a way to do it maximally. When he was going to make a Washington PCT and or like kind of demoing a little PCT action, like to start that, you have to hike in 30 miles to the border to start the southward trajectory, and like to have people with him to do that is pretty maximally supporting a hard to support FKT. And I think that that's the biggest difference maybe between like his Nolans and someone like David Hedges' Nolans, because David was also supported, but I think he did the first half of it ostensibly on his own, just due to like logistics and like having people available to help him. And that's not to like, again, that's not to say anything less. It's a supported FKT. You can support it as maximally as you want.
Yeah,
I am all for maximal support. I had maximal support on the Tahoe Rim Trail for sure, because if you're allowed to have support, you might as well have maximal support.
Yep.
And I think that his team is really dialed in being able to be creative with making that piece of the puzzle click, because it is so hard to do in these really like austere environments.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to give a shout out to Francois, and you're right. You know, like he's playing within the rules, and when it's a supported FKT, you might as well game it to the degree that helps you go as fast as you possibly can. He becomes the first person to go under 36 hours, lowers David Hedges' time by 3.5 hours. And maybe it does come down to like a big portion of that 3.5 hour margin could come down to just the enhanced crew support that Francois had. But either way, mind-blowing result for Francois. Now he's among the favorites for UTMB again. You love to see it. Pivoting, talking about Hardrock now, Corrine, I was there. You were not. Another incredible year in Silverton. I want to just say at the top here before we just share some of our takeaways, heartfelt condolences to the family of Elaine Stipula. This year, for the first time ever, a runner passed away during Hardrock. As far as I understand, she was a very experienced trail and ultra runner, having finished races like UTMB and Badwater.
Yeah. Denali 135. Like her resume is long.
Yeah. So, and as far as I understand, she collapsed, I think 6 or 7 miles into Hardrock. And I think it's, yet to be announced or determined exactly what the cause of death was, but hearts, with the family of Elaine Stipula. And it was a somber way to start the race, but with that sort of awkward introduction, it ended up being an incredible edition of Hardrock. Ludo, again, just 2 weeks or a week before his 50th birthday, repeats as champion. And then Katie Scheid closes the loop on Hardrock and also becomes the third ever career Grand Slam winner, in addition to Courtney Dauwalter and Killian Jornet.
I also loved Katie kind of calling you on the like, well, Courtney did it in a calendar year.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah being like, wait, what? And she's like, yeah, because she won Reunion and then in October, and then she, bing, bang, boom, did the triple. And he was like, oh, no way. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah, it's like in 10 months or whatever. But then we realized that Katie did it in her last 400 milers.
Which is
going
also
back
sick.
Roughly 2 years. Yeah, a little bit less than 2 years. So,
yeah.
But Katie breaks the course record. I still think that, and I think both she and Courtney would admit that they can go a lot faster on the course. Katie was up to an hour under Courtney's record splits during the day, ended up slowing and finishing about 20 minutes faster than Courtney's course record. But I still think both of them have the potential to go sub 24 eventually.
Exactly.
So,
I think that 24-hour mark is going to be the thing that looms on the women's side. And I think neither one of them, I mean, Courtney, she's won it 3 times, but she'll tell you that she has never had a good day there. And it seems hard to believe that from the outside, but I think that's real. I think she hasn't had a good day at Hardrock. And I don't think Katie would call her day a good day either. Like, she survived it in a lot of ways. And maybe that's just like what Hardrock is. It is surviving the loop. One thing that Ludo seems to do better than anyone on that course is how well he runs the downhills. that seems to be a thing, like talking to other men, talking to other athletes, that they don't understand how his leg, like how he doesn't implode because he's running the downhill so hard the whole time. I was talking to Jeff Colt about this in prep for Highland Sim this week. Just like, we're really baffled and really impressed by Ludo's ability to do that and seemingly not implode. And maybe that's the piece of the puzzle for the women's field, is like being able to make up some time on, because you're not necessarily going to be able to climb a lot faster. You need to have your stomach stay together, which has been a big hurdle for Katie and for Courtney. And then maybe it's like that downhill element of, Katie took a bunch of falls before the race, probably wasn't running downhill as confidently as she would like to. So between the stomach and running downhill, maybe those are two of the biggest factors there.
Yeah. It's so funny because the year I had a good Hardrock, one of like my big focuses during the race was just to run the downhills easy, because I had picked up something that Hal Kerner had said from 2012 when he won the race about how he just ran the downhills easy and then was able to climb well. So, but it's funny because I talked to Jim Walmsley after the race, who paced Ludo, and he said, yeah, Ludo was just ripping the downhills. I talked to Germain and Mathieu Blanchard, and they said, yeah, Ludo was just ripping the downhills and they just couldn't keep up. So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's got multiple ways that he can win the race. And this year it seemed like the descents was Ludo's, superior skill set. But I was going back and just thinking, I was like, man, like it's been since 2018 since an American man has won at Hardrock. Of course, so Browning won in 2018. Then the race was canceled in 19 and 20. And ever since then, it was Francois, Killian, Aurélien Denard-Palaz, and then Ludo and Ludo again. So the Europeans have owned the last 5 Hardrocks.
And there's more Europeans that really want to get in, like Hannes Naumburger was not in tears when I talked to him at Canyons, but that guy wants to run Hardrock so badly, and I think had been like kind of like told that, hey, you got one of the like you're in the conversation to get a special pick for it, and it didn't come to fruition. And just being like, I want this so badly. I think he's going to go do Grand Raid in the fall this year. Great. And like that'll be amazing. But it's just like, there are some other mountain guys, not just the Frenchies, but other Europeans too, that I would love to see make it into this field, along with a bunch of American guys who I think also really want to run it. Obviously, Jeff Colt, I think, is desperate to try to like find a way to wiggle into the race. And I don't blame him. It's on my bucket list as well. We went to a little ride and dine dinner last night where we rode e-bikes for like 12 miles and then had a luxurious wine pairing. Fancy.
Yeah, like fancy dinner. It was fantastic. Shout out to the Little Nell for hosting us. But I was chatting with my old friend Ted Mann there, who was one of my early idols. He's a 10-time Hardrock finisher. And just like talking about the way things have progressed and how that race has changed and how like the Europeans are kind of dominating now. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. And now it's like one of the things that he said, because I was telling him how both of my finishes are counterclockwise as this year's course was also. And he was like, oh, you got to go clockwise, which makes me think, well, Katie has an automatic chance to come back for clockwise next year. And all the veterans, including Ted, who has 10 finishes, says that it at least feels easier going clockwise. So
Is it going up the walls and down the ramps?
Yes. So I just wonder, it's a way too early, speculation about, what if Katie comes back in 2026 and goes clockwise? Could we see that sub 24 women's time?
Would love to see it, right? Yeah. Would love to see, Katie and Courtney back on that line together, because they both have these wins. And sometimes they're in the same race, but I feel like they're kind of like ghosts mirroring each other a little bit. And I want them all on the same start line.
Yeah. Cool.
No pressure.
Any other thoughts on Hardrock? I have a couple fun things to chit chat about before we close down.
I mean, I think the biggest thing, I was really excited to see Sarah Lavender Smith finish and close the loop after putting in for, I think, a decade plus into the race. Huge deal. Seeing Hillary Yang finish after putting in for like 9 or 10 years, or over the course of 9 or 10 years, closing the loop. letting her recover right now a little bit from it. Yeah. Seeing Stephanie Case bring her baby to the rock at the very end was, I think, pretty emotional for all of us. She's taking some much earned, much deserved rest now, where she doesn't have to be sleeping in a Hypoxico tent or on a treadmill in a heat suit. She can like exhale a little bit. But really, I think for me, it was seeing those finishers, the final finisher of the day. That was really emotional. Anna, is that her name? Anna. To finish and like looked great sprinting in. And she like kisses the rock and then looks up at the time and is like, okay, I did do it. I did do it. And she had 7 minutes to spare, but like was pushing to get it done. And they had some video, Mountain Outpost put up some video from her on Camp Bird Road. And she was like, yeah, I'm like try to drop in Uray or Telluride or whatever it was. And like, they were like, medical said that there was no reason to drop. They taped my knee up. And now like we're doing it. She's like, my crew didn't let me drop, and here we are. And sure enough, she did. She was able to get it done. But a lot of the runners are out there for 2 nights and 2 days. And that to me is like a very emotional part of Hardrock.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Couple closing notes for me. I had a chance to chat with Jim after the race too, and won't share too much about what we chatted about, but it seems like a good evidence that hopefully Jim's progressing back to health, having spent 30 miles with Ludo on the Hardrock course. Like 30 miles on the Hardrock course, for those who have never been there, that's a huge freaking run. I mean, it probably took them 7 or 8 hours, I would guess. So hopefully Jim is moving in the right direction, and we'll have a very strong second half of the year. And I just wanted to shout out the guy who I paced, Germain Granger, who finished 3rd place. We had such a spectacular, whatever it was, 4.5 hours together before Cordis Hall, who might be the Pacer of the Year award, going to Cordis Hall, taking Abby Hall to victory at Western States, and then Germain through the night to 3rd place at Hardrock.
He was pacing Ryan Smith when Ryan was chasing you at Hardrock.
Yes.
And they saw a headlamp, and it was Tyler who you had dropped, and they were so devastated when they caught Tyler and you weren't with him. So Cordis knows the final 30 miles of that direction of the course really well at this point. And got to pace that leg again this year for Guillermo.
Well, just last thing. It was so amazing. We went through Kroger's Canteen, Virginia's Pass right at sunset. It was beautiful. I just did 17 miles with him, but one of the best runs I've had in recent years. And Corrine, I was just revisiting the Hardrock qualifications today. I'm like looking for maybe Wasatch. Should I go to the Bear? Like, I really want a clockwise Hardrock. I got to get back on doing these hard 100-milers. And I realized that it looks to me like my 2023 Hardrock finish still qualifies me for 2026. So I might be, I might not have to suffer my way through a very hard 100-miler in the second half of the year here and still put my name in the lottery.
That would make you pretty lucky, but also, that's fine.
Those are the rules.
We'll allow it.
Play within the rules.
If them's the rules, then it does look like 2023 Hardrock still qualifies you for 2026. So I think
let's go.
Yeah, I think you're good. Also big news. Crazy Mountain in Montana became a Hardrock qualifier, and maybe more importantly, Scout Mountain 100 became a qualifier. And that to me is like so freaking cool, because they have been working so hard to get more women in that 100-mile start line. And again, the percent of women in the race, they'll never go below 20%. They will make sure that it holds there, but they try to match the percent of women in the lottery, which I think is up to like 30 or 31%, which is freaking sick. That is like honestly kind of high for a 100-mile at this point, which is amazing in North America. Definitely higher than many in Europe as well. And Scout Mountain has been one of those races who has been pushing really hard to find more and more ways to make sure women can be on that start line. So when I saw that announcement, I jumped for joy and did a little dance, and I circled that weekend in my calendar.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of cool races that are Hardrock qualifiers that sort of fly under the radar, sort of like Scout Mountain. But yeah, I mean, I was like, well, maybe this is finally my time to go do the Wasatch or go do the Bear or maybe try I'm Tough or something like that. But of course, with the second half of the summer that I have ahead of me on the work front and travel front, it would be a miserable and ugly experience to try and schlep myself through there. So hopefully that we're accurate and that 2023 Hardrock finish will still get me in the lottery.
That's how I'm reading it. That is definitely how I'm reading it. And I would say, I mean, they've definitely added some other ones that have not been announced formally, like GPT 100 in Australia got added as well. That's the race that got canceled late in the race last year due to extreme heat. I think Max King and Lucy B were leading the race when it got canceled in the 100 miler. That's at the very end of November. So you now have UTCT and it's called Grampian Peaks or GPT in Australia. Yeah. It looks like another race in France got added as well. La Chapelle got added.
Oh yeah.
It is the weekend before. UTMB. So that's also, I think, very exciting to have that make it onto the qualifying list. So it's just like, again, they are expanding a little bit, not in a big way, but they have added a few races to the annual calendar that I think continues to cover some good terrain for folks.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so we'll get to your Hardrock qualification later, Corrine, but a couple more things to just touch on before we wind down here. I thought it would be fun to just quickly do a mid-season Trail Runner of the Year watch list, just kind of reflect on the 2025 season as it stands now and who some of the top performing athletes are. I just wrote down a bunch of names here, so I'll just rattle them off and you can respond and then we can move on. But just some names here. I mean, Francesco Pupi's having a fire season. Obviously, Katie Scheid, Abby Hall, Fu Zhao Zhang, Killian Jornet. And then like the American trifecta of Caleb Olson with the Trans Grand Western States double victories. Chris Myers, Chuckanut, Lake Sonoma, and then his Western States. Killian, second place at Chianti, third place at Western. Riley Brady, though, with the Western States disappointment. Of course, the amazing Black Canyon and Quad Rock. On the shorter distance front, like El Hussein, Patrick Kipnano, Madalena Floria, Sarah Alonso, who's, I think, leading Golden Trail right now. You could probably even
did you see that she was attacked by a cow in training and is out probably for August and is hoping to make it back for the Golden Trail finals?
Oh, no.
Yeah, she got attacked by a cow and broke her 6th rib and has like a bunch of contusions.
Oh, no.
So she thinks she's out for like probably through OCC and is hoping that she can make the finals in September.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's a huge bummer.
Yeah, Sarah's been on a heater here in the early part of 2025, but hopefully it's just a blip on the radar and it'll lead to a strong fall and winter. But anyway, I think it's fun to just maybe throw some kudos at some of these athletes who are performing, as some of the best in the world here in 2025. Of course, at the end of the year, we'll do our full Trail Runner of the Year vote and recognize, the season in totality, but figured it'd be a fun mid-season check-in on some of these names here.
Yeah. I also think that for a lot of people, their final piece of the puzzle will be a UTMB finals performance, a world's performance, a Golden Trail finals performance. And I do think from particularly the men's side right now, just knowing who's on world's teams for like the 80K trail in particular, I do think that, Francesco or someone getting the dub at Worlds, I think then really solidifies their season. So that race is shaping up to be a who's who. I feel like the UTMB men's squad feels a little bit light, and the 80K at Worlds for men feels like a lot of heavy hitters. So very curious. A lot of those guys are trying to double though. I think like OCC or CCC to Worlds, and they're like 3 weeks apart. So that feels a little bit intense to me.
Yeah, it's funny, actually. The full Team USA roster was just announced, including the resume spots for all
Short
the
trail
distances yesterday. Maybe I could pull that up and we could chat about it briefly. But Travis and I were just texting about some of this stuff, and he pointed out, like, Francesco Puppi, for example, has not lost a trail race since OCC 2024, where he was second to Eli. And of course, we all know that he was charging at the end there. So Francesco, 7 straight trail wins dating back to last summer. So he is very much in that trail runner of the year mix. But I do think the Team USA top to bottom roster between the vertical, the classic, short trail, and long trail is the best possible Team USA we could have. And again, going back to my comment on Jim and pacing Ludo, like, especially that long trail men's Team USA, I'm like, with Caleb.
Yeah. So let's I've got it pulled up. So
do it.
So we'll go long to short effectively. So long trail for the US, we've got Jim Walmsley, Tyler Green, Zach Miller, Caleb Olson, Adam Peterman, Trayson Knopp. On the women's side, Katie Scheid, Jen Lichter, Allison Baca, Emily Schmitz, Claire Rhodes, and Shea Aquilano. Great. Super strong teams. The short trail, we've got for men, David Sinclair, Ryan Becker, Eli Hemming, Seth Ruling, Michelino Sanseri, and Noah Williams.
It's cool Seth's on that team, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that we've kind of couched him in the 100K stuff, but the dude is such a good 50K verti runner. The trail also sounds like it's going to be fairly technical up high. So someone like Michelino in that terrain, someone like Eli Hemming in that terrain, I think is also very, very exciting. On the women's side, Helen Mino-Faulkner, Grayson Murphy stepping up in distance, the previous world champ in the Mountain Classic, and third in the vertical kilometer. So again, Helen, Grayson, Tabor Hemming, Jane Moss, Ruby Lindquist, and Lindsay Allison. We got a lot of couples. We got a lot of couples all of a sudden on the team here. The vertical mountain they kind of posted this funny because they left out on the men's side Cam Smith, and on the women's side Anna Gibson. But I'm assuming they're both taking their vertical spots. They're also on the classic mountain team. So again, the vertical team should be Anna Gibson, Sydney Peterson, Hillary Allen, Jess Brazeau, and then on the men's team it should be Christian Allen, Joe Gray, Tyler McCandless, and Cam Smith. Classic mountain. So again, the up-down iteration. Because Grayson made the short team, it opened up a spot. So this was a brand new change as of this week. Courtney Coppinger made the team now. Anna Gibson, Lauren Gregory, and Allie McLaughlin. Men's side, David Norris, Mason Copey, Taylor Stack, and Cam Smith. So
great teams. Top
super
to bottom.
solid teams. I mean, it's not going to be easy. The French team is so good. The Spanish team is so good. The Italian team is so good. Lottie Brinks made the German team.
Let's go.
So there's a lot of excitement in general, but very, very strong teams. And I think they have until early August to submit the official resume, at which point they will not be able to sub alternates, I think, at that point. So we do know that there are people waiting in the wings as the first alternates for these teams, but I think that they will officially put in those start spots to the World Mountain and Trail Running Championships and World Athletics, first or second week of August.
Yeah. Well, cool. As much as we've lamented the fact that UTMB and the World Championships are so close together, I think both are shaping up to be quite exciting. And Freetrail is planning to be in both places. So a couple European trips here in the back half of the summer, a lot to be excited about. And thank goodness we have a little bit of a break here after Hardrock. The final thing I wanted to touch on, Corrine, before we close, right after Western States, as you teased at the beginning, I went down to Mammoth for just a quick day on my way east towards Colorado. Went out for a little run, was chit-chatting with Tim Tollefson, of course, the unofficial mayor of Mammoth Lakes, California. Also, friend Clara Freshner was there, Ryan Thrower. Clara's on the Mammoth 200 start list. And while we were there, we were just chit-chatting about how that race is shaping up. And holy smokes, if you look at the ultra sign-up for the Mammoth 200 in its debut year here in 2025, it's a murderer's row of 200-mile beasts. So I can tick through some of the names unless you want want to do it yourself?
Oh, you can tick right through them. I have avoided looking at it, actually.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe we'll just start with the women and somebody who I got to chat with a bit. Tara Dower, we neglected to talk about this during our Hardrock conversation, but the revenge game of the century for Tara Dower after a disappointing DNF due to illness during race week at Western States, and then being first on the wait list, suited up, ready to do Hardrock on race morning last Friday, and unfortunately not getting the opportunity to do so. So Tara Dower will be their ultimate revenge game. But then Rachel Entrekin, the winner of Cocodona, Mika Hughes, who I know has done well in these long distance races. A certain Corrine Malcolm appears on the start list.
Who, me?
Clara Freshner, who I just mentioned. Men's side, Jimmy Elam stepping up. Jeff Browning, Max Joliffe, Jake Jackson, Timothy Olson is on the Mammoth 200 start list. Finn Melanson, who's of course now a veteran at the distance. I don't know. It's shaping up to be quite exciting. Oh, Ader Ramirez, who I think was in the top 5 at Cocodona this year. It's going to be exciting. Mammoth 200.
There are a whole lot of names on that list there. But yeah, it's kind of exciting for a debut year. They've gotten a lot of people excited and a lot of people signed up. They had to hold off opening general registration for a long time, just waiting for their permits to come through, and the permits came through and things moved ahead. My fall is still very up in the air. I'm hopeful that I will race something. But is that Run Rabbit, which I'm like 48th on the wait list for? Is that Mammoth 200, which I am very much signed up for. So we'll wait and see.
Okay, well, are both Hardrock qualifiers? Is Mammoth
if Mammoth is a Hardrock qualifier, that would be so. It should be, right?
Yeah.
I think it should be. They do seem to sometimes retroactively give races Hardrock qualifiers.
Okay.
Like Scout Mountain has already happened, but anyone who ran it this year got their qualifier for next year, type of thing. Like Crazy Mountain, which is happening in like 2 weeks, just announced that they became a qualifier. So it's like sometimes the retroactive gods do shine down on you. And come on, Mammoth, give me Mammoth 200 as a Hardrock qualifier, and then I won't even look at Run Rapid anymore. I'm all in at Mammoth if that happens. Tim, hit a girl up. Hillary, hit a girl up.
I'm sure Tim and Hillary are absolutely inundating Dale Garland's inbox, hoping to get that Hardrock qualification. It certainly deserves it. I mean, 200 miles at altitude, a tough course. If you can get through the Mammoth 200, you're certainly Hardrock worthy, but certainly that's outside of our pay grade. But what I will say in closing is I think it was like the first 15 miles or something of the course when I was there. Ryan, Clara, Tim all did the first 50K. And from the top of Mammoth Mountain, you can basically see the entire course. It's effectively just a single loop. It's going to be an instant classic. I mean, from just a course perspective, I don't know how you could draw up a better 200-mile race. So shout out to Tim, Hillary, and the Trailfest team. And shout out to Corrine, who will hopefully be on the start line for the Mammoth 200 in September.
Who is supposedly racing. Yeah, no, I feel fortunate to have gotten a spot. But I'll be at something in the fall, hopefully, just trying to figure out what that actually is.
Me too.
Something at altitude, apparently. So,
all right. So to our viewers and listeners, jump in the chat. Let us know where Corrine and I should run this fall. There's a lot of great options, and unfortunately, you just have to be in good physical fitness in order to tackle most of these races, which I unfortunately am not.
Maybe one thing we didn't talk about that we're just going to add on to the end here real quick. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe we convince Killian to come do like the JMT directly into the Mammoth 200.
That would be fire. Yeah, I mean, in closing, there is a lot of eyeball emojis right now about what Killian's up to next. And it seems like he's eyeing some sort of a personal project. At least that's my interpretation. And it sounds like he wants to come back to the U.S., so I think it'd be rad if he went after Francois Fresh, Nolan's FKT. I sort of have a feeling he's probably eyeing something like his Alpine Connections project that includes both cycling, alpinism, trail running. maybe the Colorado 14ers, something like that. But looks like the GOAT's going to have some big project here in the second half of the summer.
Yeah, we'll see what it is. It seems like he's publicly sourcing it, but I have to imagine he's already got like a list written down and he's just trying to figure out what actually makes the most sense. I feel like Nolan's had to be high on that list. But with Francois just having done it, does that make him more inclined to do it or less inclined? Like, I don't know the answer to that, because I don't think he's interested in like doing the Colorado Trail or maybe even a classic.
That would be cool.
But like, it would be amazing, but I don't know if he's actually interested in that or if he wants it to be some sort of mountaineering crossover FKT, i.e. like Roper's High Route in the Sierra, which is a lot of it, some of it's on the JMT, but a lot of it's like overland. The Cascade High Route here in the North Cascade, which links up 5 different glacial traverses that Caitlin Gerben and Jenny Abeg did a couple summers ago. Like, I don't see him doing the Wonderland Trail. I don't see him doing the White's 100 mile out east. Like, I don't see him doing the Vermont Long Trail. It's like, I think it's got to be something with a little bit of spice to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, an exciting cliffhanger to sign off with, but exciting to see what Killian opts for here with the rest of the season after just an incredible Western States. Corrine, great to reconnect and debrief a little bit after not getting to catch up for a couple of weeks. I hope you're getting rested up. I'm sure we're both going to UTMB, right?
Yeah, you're stuck with me, I'm pretty sure.
Let's go. All right.
Yeah, you schedule, you pencil me in. I didn't want to bother you in Harmony during Hardrock, so you got to
funny. Yeah.
Pencil me into the schedule.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, like this time of year, everybody in the quote unquote industry is so busy. And I get the feeling that we're not the only people that have yet to put any thought into UTMB, but you just sort of survive Broken Arrow, Western States, Hardrock, take a little break, then you start thinking about UTMB. And then, of course, the World Championships thereafter. So a lot more to be excited about now that we are halfway through the season and a lot more to come. For Corrine Malcolm, I am Debo. Have a great weekend.
Bye.